Welcome to the latest CyberBytes podcast. Today I welcome Yossi Appleboum, CEO and co-founder of Sepio. How are you, Yossi?
Very good. Interesting time for sure in our field and in our market, and looking forward for this discussion.
Absolutely. And what have you been up to in the last few weeks? Obviously, I know you're US based, but with Israeli heritage. A lot of holidays and stuff like that. So talk to me. How's your last sort of month been?
Busy, tons of holidays. It's actually the high seasons. It's always fun to be Israeli in the US because you get October or September, late September, October, and then the American or the Christian holidays. But seriously, busy on one end. Excited for actually a strong end of this year, and actually super excited about the next several months, business-wise and hopefully globally, with the things that are happening all around.
Of course, Thanksgiving next month as well, right? So you've got another couple of days spent off.
We're done.
Yeah,
Wednesday.
brilliant, cool. Well, look, Yossi, with all guests, we take it back. One thing that's interesting, and one thing that we spoke about previously, this is your third time founding a business, right? So just for individuals that may not know, give us a little bit of background on yourself, where you come from, and how you got into the industry.
So on the coming January, we'll celebrate 10 years in the US. As most of the Israeli, we moved for a very short time and found ourselves staying. In late 90s, together with two friends and colleagues from the unit, we actually started our first business, first bootstrap. We sold that in 2012, last day of 2012. We were involved in another amazing company that was pioneering automotive cybersecurity. And then Sepio since 2016. Did very well in the past, very excited about what we're doing together this time, especially in the broad aspect of the problem we are solving, considered for decades undoable, unsolvable, and eventually we cracked the technology or created the technology to solve the issue of figuring out what's there in terms of outer devices, just based on existence and not on activity. And again, there's amazing IoT and OT security companies in the world. It's maybe the best time to congratulate armies for additional $200 million invested in this amazing company. While saying that, our approach for first answering the question about what's there, what's eventually the need for visibility, is coming from a totally different angle, which is not based on activity inside the network, but based on the fact that a device has sort of touch or connectivity into the infrastructure is enough to trigger a discovery and classification of that device.
Brilliant. And what gave you the founding ideas of Sepio? Was it these previous businesses? Was it a complete brainstorm one day with you and the other co-founders? There's four of you, correct?
Yeah. So yeah, the three of us that has the phony Israeli accent, the other two are in Tel Aviv, are working together for 33 years by now. And Greg, who joined us for this journey, was VP of sales of the company that acquired our first company. And I'm so happy we brought as we call it, Native American in as a joke. But being serious, what drove us to start Sepio was a need. And there's no better source for needs than potential customers and ecosystem. And I remember a meeting on a rooftop in Tel Aviv prior to starting Sepio with someone that was CISO for one of the largest UK headquartered banks. And he came with a small device in his pocket and he put it on the table and he said, we found a couple of these by random scan. And if you'll ever have a solution for something like that, I'll be a customer. Well, unfortunately, they didn't become a customer yet, but many others did. And that was the drive to, change the mindset of how the industry is looking on the threat that is coming from connected devices compared to existing solutions.
Brilliant. And for those who may not know, who are Sepio, and what is it you guys do on a day-to-day basis?
So first, Sepio is global company. We started Sepio as a global company from day one. We have, of course, strong existence and activity in Tel Aviv. We have actually quite strong activity also in Lisbon, Portugal, in which we actually running all of our data science and significant part of what we call the outputs, the user interface and integrations. So it's a fully owned subsidiary in there, and headquartered here in Rockville, Maryland, next to Washington, D.C. Sepio is helping organizations from any type and any size to find any connected device, understand the risk that it applies on the organization, and eventually manage the risk. As it's a SaaS-based solution, a security solution that deploys quickly into the organization, literally overnight, and enable the organization. It can be a quite large bank or insurance company, healthcare, government agency, critical infrastructure, and so on and so on and so on, understand that risk. And eventually it falls into the long-lasting cliche of how can you protect what you don't know about? And we help the organization first to know about, and second, to protect against that. So it's not just a monitoring tool. It starts mostly with figuring out what's there, and then it gives tools to control what is allowed to be connected based on multiple parameters.
Brilliant for that. In terms of that, you mentioned there a range of different verticals. Very traditionally in OT security, or for your instance, sort of IoT, you see a lot of healthcare, you see a lot of, as you mentioned, critical infrastructure, so your manufacturing companies. What kind of gave you guys the idea of going into those financial sectors and insurance?
A connected device is a connected device, and what's the difference between a kiosk and an ATM machine to a connected IoT panel on a conference room or something like that? Eventually, it's outward connected to. And unfortunately, I think that the misunderstanding in the industry and sometimes the lack of awareness that any connected device, starting your own mouse to your IoT device that sits near you, or some OT controller, a SCADA controller that is connected to the generator that feeds the electricity, a backup electricity to that building, eventually all of them applies a risk into the organization. So when we started to talk to financial institutions, their immediate reaction was like, yeah, it's critically important for manufacturing. It's critically important for electric companies, and we have these and we have that. But what about, why do you think we care? And then we started to list the devices that are grouped into the non-NACT devices, the ones that their NACT do not monitor. And the list of that was in a magnitude of, in a really large bank, hundreds of thousands, or even a couple of millions of devices. How can you leave such a, it's not a door, it's actually a wing in the building that is literally uncontrolled?
Absolutely. And how big do you, as an individual, see the threat that is sort of within these devices, within these companies?
Well, I came from intelligence agencies, so always you see also the other side of the equation, not just the defensive. And seriously, if in late 90s, early 2000, it was mostly governments and kind of superpower, cyber superpowers taking leverage of outdoor devices as their go-to in terms of cyber weapons. We see now criminals are using it. The commodization of these attack tools and know-how became a pain on almost any organization. I'll give two examples. We have a customer in the smart building or smart campus, to be precise, in New York. And there are hundreds of people getting in and out to that campus on a daily basis with connected devices from, when I say people, I mean technicians and all of that. There are tens of thousands of people getting into that campus.
Yeah.
but hundreds of them are coming within the title of technical, connecting devices, disconnecting device, monitoring systems, and so on. How can they know what's there unless they monitor that? The immediate risk is immediate. And by the way, we are exposed to stories on a daily basis. Not always it's a superpower backed organization that is literally attacking your organization. It can be a vulnerable device. It can be uncontrolled device. It falls into shadow IT. It falls into insider threats. It falls into multiple titles of cyber threats, and it's all around. It's all around because of ignorance. It's all around because of evilness, and it's all about crime. And not always just North Korea or someone like that. It can be just a criminal organization that want to attack an ATM, and we have plenty of these as well.
Absolutely. And you're currently a Series B vendor, right? So when when growing the business, like what sort of challenges have you faced, knowing how sort of big these threats are in the OT or IoT kind of sector?
2020, 21, we actually running from crisis to crisis in industry, in global, in the Middle East, and all of that. So there is not even 1 year that we are not in COVID or war, a global economic crisis or something like that. So adding that layer on top of running a company and growing a company is not easy.
Challenging.
But it is keeping us edge, kind of awake all day long, and actually enjoying in a way the suffer. But challenges are from any angle in the business. You need customers, you need them to understand the problem, then you need them to believe you have the solution. You need funding, and it's not easy always to get funding. You need good stories, so good marketing to help. While when you come as a cybersecurity company with a different approach, let's call it innovative approach, to be feeling good with ourselves, not always the customers are happy to talk about that because they don't want to put a cross on their forehead. And as such, you need people to vouch for your story. Not always easy to find them. But if all of our customers will come out and say, "Hey, we are using Sepio," our life will be way easier than
Absolutely.
sometimes.
Cool. And look, what was the most important thing for you, being a third-time founder? How did you kind of make sure that Sepio was a success on the back of sort of learnings previously in businesses?
Well, first success is at the end. So I would never call ourselves a success until you get into a phase that you look back and say, well, we did that.
Yeah.
So humbleness is a significant part of that. There are good days in which you feel really good with yourself, but there are plenty of hard days. I think being third time, first you know what you are getting into.
Yeah.
By the way, it's part of the craziness. Why do you get into the same crime scene again and again? There's a lot of sacrifice in terms of family and your own your own lifestyle, traveling nonstop. It's not always fun. It's mostly not fun. But it helps because it's a long journey. You get into a very dark tunnel for a very long time, and then you see a flash of a light. You feel good, and then you see another part of the tunnel that you need to run through it, and another time a bit of a light, and again and again and again. But I think it is easier because if you are smart and you have the right team near you, and you're having the same founding team, we know each other, we know how to push the buttons to make each crazy, but also that the ability to rely on each other. It's maybe one of the strengths that I would never give up on. In addition to that, just more people know you. It's easier to get into phone call or a meeting with anyone that you want almost.
Brilliant. And look, as you mentioned a couple of times, you run Sepio as a global business. What's the biggest thing for you to make sure that everybody's happy, everyone's on par, in terms of the Sepio kind of mission, for example? What's the couple of biggest things that you make sure everyone's happy and culturally everyone wants to do the best for Sepio?
No, first it's a culture thing. It's different cultures, and the Israeli team and the Lisbonian team and the American team share a lot of things together, but it's also a different culture, and it's a different mindset, and it's a different rhythm sometimes, and balancing between it's not easy. In time like 24, when we are a week from the elections in the US, more than a year in a war in Israel, with people from Europe, with people in Israel, with people in America, and you want to keep everyone as one team, it requires a lot of, let's call it emotional intelligence and not just being smart. Great HR team helps a lot, maybe more than anyone else. But also finding the right team. After October 7, when a significant part of our team was taken to their service, and the Lisbonian team took ownership, not because being asked, but because they care about the company. That was one of the best days in my career.
Wow.
When American team is jumping on a call and each one is bringing some piece of some Israeli, working for Israeli-owned company, and bringing something like that, not because of the politics, not because of blind support. I don't expect people to agree with Israel on everything. I actually don't agree. I don't expect anyone to do something he's not comfortable with. But when it comes from people working for the same culture, bringing a real solution to a real problem, it keeps everyone motivated to do the right thing. And eventually we have people that became friends from other sides of the ocean. They spend time not just on work, and what can a manager expect more than that?
Absolutely. And you mentioned there the election next week. I've got a couple of questions. One, who is it you're voting for? And two, what sort of impact do you think this will have on cybersecurity or the US in general?
Uh, in Maryland, it's not relevant whom you vote for because it's a democratic state, so I can
Okay.
excuse myself of answering that.
Yeah.
And we don't like to talk about politics in business. Having said that, there's a lot of impact. There are different approaches. Both parties, of course. I'm always optimistic about the intentions of people.
Yeah.
And I think both, we can kill each other and argue and all of that, but everyone wants the same, which is the best for their own country. And I think that the US need to make a decision on its role in global role, and act accordingly. So there are different approaches and all of that, but US is a superpower. They can think they are not. They can excuse themselves of doing some stuff, but it is a superpower,
Yeah.
and you are not allowed to give up on that. And when you are not allowed to give up on that, it requires you to do stuff that sometimes you don't want to do.
Yeah.
And it's first taking a stand. There is a war in Ukraine, not just war in Israel. There is maybe the worst tension in Europe since World War II. There is a global issue between US and China. There is a global issue between US and North Korea. There is a global issue between US and Iran. All of them as a cyber part to that.
Yeah.
And without taking ownership of that, the result is never will be what you need or what you want. So I think that a new administration, regardless who's going to be, will have to bring new breed, new wave, new decisions. And I cross my fingers and want to believe that these initiatives first will help the industry, well, actually, first will help the national security, and of course, as part of that, industry will enjoy, because industry is part of the national security for this great country and the Western world. We don't
Absolutely.
want any of us to see adversaries, regardless their name, win in any dispute we are involved with, right?
Absolutely. And look, back to the interesting stuff. In terms of Sepio, you mentioned earlier on that as a business, you always need to be kind of moving forward and stuff like that. Look, everybody knows that it's such a populated market. As a business at Sepio, how are you guys staying innovative to make sure that you're always that step ahead of the curve, or when a new startup comes on and has this incredible idea, that you're almost on that level already?
Yeah, well, when you talk to CISOs of big organizations, they say, I'm getting slammed by several cybersecurity vendors a day.
Yeah,
I don't have attention to do that, so I give up.
yeah,
Now, I don't believe them, and they don't believe themselves. They need to be aware of what's going on, and they may push back, which I expect them to push back. But when you have a good solution to a problem they are suffering of, they listen to you. Now, so to your question, first you need to come out with a story that you can catch their ear within several seconds, and this will trigger that. Okay, it makes sense to listen for additional 5 minutes, and within that 5 minutes, okay, it makes sense to listen to 30 minutes, and from that, it makes sense to test it. And it's not easy. And you learn how to do that, but eventually it's kind of almost like a muscle memory. So summarizing what you do within 1 or 2 sentences and make it provocative enough, not bullshit, but provocative enough to spark an interest. So that's on, let's call it the selling and the marketing side of things. On the other end, you need to come with a solution to a problem they suffer of, and they have and prioritize the story or actually create the story that will be prioritizing that high enough, because they have more problems than they can support, and everyone wants to be one of the top 5 or top 3 or top whatever, and not always it's a one fit all. The story to a smart campus, and the story to a bank, and a story to healthcare institution and some pharmaceutical company, sometimes it's totally different pain points, different, maybe the same system as we do, same solution, same everything, but different story. And that's important. But it is, startup needs to grow and needs to go fast, and that's what keeps us awake at night. And in addition to that, you need to find the right partners. We published that, I think, a year ago, and it keeps growing and growing and growing, a partnership with companies like Lenovo. On one end, it's a computer manufacturer, so what's the story? But on the other end, that computer manufacturer is very innovative in the way they treat with cybersecurity, and they came with a platform called ThinkShield. So I'm not here to sell Lenovo computers, but they are very innovative. So if you have the innovative partner and share even if it's really big comparing to you, share the same ideas on how to keep leading the market, you may find yourself in a very good position when, regardless how big is my team in sales, which is not big, you get it's not power multiplier, it's actually way more than that when you partner with someone like that, and there is a good culture fit, as we have with Lenovo.
Absolutely. And coming towards the end of this kind of podcast, Yossi, what else can you tell me about Sepio? What have you guys got planned for the next sort of coming months into the new year, but then also in the next couple of years? What's next?
One of the challenges of cybersecurity solutions is not being able to be deployed, which is a challenge, huge challenge, and we spend tons of hours, days, weeks, and months on how to make it fast, very fast. But the main challenge is how to make the user use your system, how to keep them enjoying the value your system is bringing, and how to do it while these teams are over consumed by their systems, over consumed by their incidents, by their threats, and all of that. So we invest significant part of our time and resources on coming up with solutions that will proactively bring information to the user and not passively respond to the user. So if you build a system today that requires the user to log in, start browsing into screens and all of that, and you want them to do it on a daily basis, not going to happen. If you want the system to be used, you need the system to almost like be a part of the team and communicate and trigger interaction with the team when it requires attention, and then motivate them to go through the life cycle of using your the experience of using your user interface. But when that's the last resort, if the system cannot be, hey, Mr. User, we found a threat, the corrective action is A, B, C, D. Do you want that to happen on your behalf? And you know, I don't like buzzwords like generative AI and all of that. They're overused. But eventually, AI is not here to stay as a buzzword. It's here to make our life more effective.
Yeah.
And this is a great example on how to make lives more efficient and save resources that does not exist in any case.
Brilliant. Well, look, thank you for that. Final question from me. What's one bit of advice that you would tell me, the viewers, but then also every single day in your business at Sepio? Anyone joining the business, any prospect customers? What's that one bit of advice that you live by?
Wow. Awareness. Never close your eyes. Regardless what you think you know about your ecosystem, you don't know enough, and it is moving part. So awareness, awareness, awareness. Surprises come from so many angles. It can be from security, it can from health, it can from your own lifestyle. Awareness is a key to not be surprised.
Brilliant. Well, look, Yossi, thank you very much for joining. Great to hear about the time at Sepio, and look, wish you guys the best in the future. I'm sure that there's some great times ahead.
Thank you so much.